The day has done all it needs to do. Now only stillness remains. Let your thoughts loosen, like threads unraveling in the dark. What comes next is not to solve or to chase, just a quiet story drifting close. Perhaps it's a voice that remembers you, or a silence that has waited patiently. Let it meet you where you are, and let it lead you gently into rest. The desert wind carried a faint tick-tock, like a heartbeat buried in the sand. In the crumbling town of Dusthollow, where the sun bleached bones and dreams alike, Clara Wade stood in her grandfather's old clock shop, staring at a mantel clock that refused to run. Its hands were frozen at 3:17, the same hour her grandfather, Elias, had passed 10 years ago. Clara's fingers traced the clock's chipped mahogany frame, her reflection distorted in the dusty glass. She'd come back to this ghost of a town to sell the shop, to bury the past for good. But the past, it seemed, wasn't ready to let her go. Dusthollow was a place where time felt slippery, where folks swore they heard whispers in the sagebrush, or saw shadows linger too long in the noon sun. Clara, at 32, didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in debts, in the bank letters piling up in her city apartment, in the practical need to liquidate this shop and move on. Yet, as she sorted through Elias's cluttered workbench gears, springs, and half-finished pendulums scattered like a puzzle, she couldn't shake the feeling that something watched her. The shop smelled of oil and old wood, and the silence was heavy, broken only by that strange, rhythmic tick-tock from nowhere. She set the mantel clock aside and moved to a grandfather clock in the corner, its face carved with moons and stars. Elias had loved that one, called it his dream catcher. Clara wound its key, more out of habit than hope, but the pendulum stayed still. She sighed, brushing her auburn hair from her face, and turned to the shop's front door. A man stood there, framed by the fading light, his silhouette tall and lean. She hadn't heard the bell jingle. "Evenin', Miss Wade," he said, his voice smooth as river stones. He stepped inside, boots clicking on the warped floorboards. His name was Jonah Reed, a local rancher with eyes like storm clouds and a smile that could charm a rattlesnake. Clara had met him once, years ago, when she was a teenager visiting Elias. Back then, Jonah had been all swagger and stolen glances. Now he carried a quiet weight, like a man who'd seen too many sunsets alone. "Jonah," Clara said, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Didn't expect company. Shop's not exactly open. Figured I'd check on you," he said, leaning against the counter. "Town's talking about you coming back. Saying it's brave, stirring up old memories in a place like this." His gaze drifted to the mantel clock. "That one special?" Clara shrugged. "Just broken, like the rest. Grandpa never fixed it before he, well, you know." Jonah nodded, his fingers brushing the clock's edge. "Elias was a good man. Always said time's a river, not a road. You can't walk back, but you can listen to where it's flowing." He paused, studying her. "You stay in long?" "Long enough to sell this place," she said, crossing her arms. "Then I'm gone. No offense, but Dusthollow's not my future." He chuckled, low and warm. "Fair enough. But this town's got a way of holding on to folks. Be careful what you stir up, Clara." He tipped his hat and left, the bell finally jingling as the door swung shut. Clara locked up, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't like how Jonah's words lingered like dust in the air. Back in the shop, she lit a lantern, its glow casting long shadows. She reached for the mantel clock again, intending to pack it away, when a soft click stopped her. The second hand twitched, then began to move. Tick-tock. Her breath caught. She hadn't wound it. She hadn't touched the gears. The sound grew louder, echoing in the empty shop. Clara stepped back, her boot catching a loose floorboard. The other clocks, dozens of them, wall clocks, cuckoos, pocket watches, began to tick in unison, a chorus of time waking up. She spun around, heart pounding, searching for a source, an explanation. The lantern flickered, and in its dim light, she saw a shadow move across the wall, a figure, indistinct, bending over the workbench. "Who's there?" She called, her voice sharp. No answer. The shadow vanished, and the clocks fell silent, all but the mantel clock, still ticking steadily. Clara grabbed it, half expecting it to burn her hands, but it was cool, ordinary. She set it down, her mind racing. A trick of the light, she told herself. Old wiring, maybe? Dusthollow was playing with her head. She blew out the lantern and left the shop, locking the door behind her. The desert night was vast, stars sharp as pins. As she walked to the boarding house where she was staying, the tick-tock followed her, faint but persistent, like a memory she couldn't shake. Clara woke to the faint scent of sagebrush and the distant howl of a coyote. The boarding house room was sparse, a creaky bed, a chipped wash basin, a window framing the endless desert. She lay still, staring at the ceiling, the tick-tock from last night echoing in her mind. The mantel clock's sudden life, the shadow on the wall, it was nonsense, she told herself. A tired mind in a strange place. Yet sleep had been restless, her dreams filled with gears spinning backward and a voice calling her name, soft as a breeze. She dressed quickly, pulling on a flannel shirt and boots, determined to focus on the task at hand, sorting the shop for sale. The morning sun cast long shadows across Dusthollow's empty streets as she walked to the clock shop. The town felt smaller than she remembered, its saloon and general store sagging under time's weight. A few locals nodded as she passed, their eyes curious but guarded. Clara ignored them, unlocking the shop door with a rusty key. Inside, the air was cool and still. The mantel clock sat where she'd left it, its hands now at 7:42, ticking steadily. She stared, unease prickling her skin. She'd half expected it to be silent again, proof that last night was a fluke. Instead, it seemed to mock her, its rhythm too perfect for a clock untouched for a decade. She opened its back panel, checking the gears. They were clean, oiled, as if someone had tended them recently. Her grandfather's tools were meticulous, but this was impossible. Elias was gone. Clara set the clock aside and began sorting papers on the workbench ledgers, receipts, sketches of clock designs. Her fingers brushed a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed. Elias's handwriting filled it, not just notes on repairs, but musings about time, about Dusthollow. "The town keeps its own hours," he'd written. "Some clocks don't tick for the living." Clara frowned, closing the book. She didn't need cryptic riddles. She needed a buyer. A knock startled her. The door opened and a woman stepped in, her silver hair braided tightly. Mabel Thorne, the boarding house owner, carried a basket of biscuits and a thermos of coffee. "Thought you might need fuel," Mabel said, her smile warm but knowing. "Working in this shop ain't just about clocks, is it?" Clara took a biscuit, grateful but wary. "Just cleaning up. Place is a mess." Mabel's eyes flicked to the mantel clock. "That one's running again. Elias always said it was stubborn, like him." She poured coffee into a tin mug, her voice dropping. "You feel him here, don't you? This shop's got his heart in it." Clara stiffened. "I don't believe in ghosts, Mabel. I'm here to sell, not chase stories." Mabel chuckled. "Fair enough. But Dusthollow's got a way of telling its own tales. Your grandpa knew that." She paused, studying Clara. "You met Jonah Reed yet? He's been a scan after you." Clara's cheeks warmed. "He stopped by last night." "Why is he so curious?" "He's got his reasons," Mabel said cryptically. "Jonah's tied to this town, same as Elias was. Same as you might be if you stay long enough." She left the basket and thermos, her parting words soft. "Mind the clocks, Clara. They've got stories to tell." Alone again, Clara sipped the coffee, its bitterness grounding her. She pushed Mabel's words aside and focused on the shop, hauling boxes of spare parts to the back room. As she worked, the ticking grew louder, not just the mantel clock but others, their rhythm sensing like a pulse. She ignored it, stacking crates, until a soft clatter stopped her. A pocket watch had fallen from a shelf, its chain tangled. She picked it up, its face etched with a name, Jonah Reed. The door jingled, and Jonah himself stood there, hat in hand. "Mornin', Clara," he said, his smile easy but his eyes searching. "Find something interesting?" She held up the watch, her pulse quickening. "This yours?" It was just sitting here. Jonah's smile faded. He took the watch, his fingers brushing hers. "Was my pa's. Lost it years ago when Elias was still alive. How'd it turn up now?" Clara shook her head. "Beats me. This place is full of surprises." She hesitated, then asked, "You and Elias were close, weren't you?" Jonah nodded, pocketing the watch. "He was like family. Taught me more than just clocks, how to listen to what ain't said." He leaned closer, his voice low. "You hearin' anything yet, Clara? 'Cause this shop's trying to talk." She crossed her arms, deflecting. "It's just a shop, Jonah. Old and creaky, like the rest of this town." He held her gaze a moment longer, then stepped back. "Maybe. But if you change your mind, I'm around." He left, the door swinging shut, but his words lingered like the ticking. Clara turned to the mantel clock, its hands now at 8:03. She hadn't touched it, yet it kept perfect time. She opened Elias's journal again, skimming his words. "Some spirits mend what's broken, not to haunt, but to heal." Her breath hitched. Was it possible? No, she thought, slamming the journal shut. She was here to close a chapter, not start one. But as she worked through the morning, the ticking followed her, soft and patient, like a promise waiting to be kept. The noon sun hung heavy over Dusthollow, turning the clock shop into a furnace. Clara wiped sweat from her brow, her hands smudged with dust, as she sorted through another box of Elias's belongings. The mantel clock ticked on, its rhythm a steady companion now, though she still checked it warily, half expecting it to stop or speed up. It didn't. Its hands moved with quiet purpose, as if it knew something she didn't. The other clocks, too, kept their strange chorus, their ticking weaving through the shop like a thread. She found a bundle of letters tied with twine, the paper brittle and yellowed. Most were from suppliers, but one caught her eye, a letter addressed to Elias in a woman's flowing script. No name, just initials. L.R. Clara hesitated, then slipped it into her pocket. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it felt too personal to leave among the clutter. The shop was starting to feel less like a task and more like a puzzle, each piece hinting at a story she wasn't ready to hear. The door's bell jingled, pulling her from her thoughts. A young woman stood there, her blonde hair pinned loosely, her dress faded but clean. She was maybe 25, with eyes that darted like a startled deer. "You're Clara Wade?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. Clara nodded, standing. "That's me. You need something?" The woman stepped inside, clutching a small brass clock. "I'm Tessa Hoy. I heard you were fixing things up here. This clock, it was my ma's. Stopped the day she passed. I thought maybe you could..." Her voice trailed off, her fingers tightening around the clock. Clara took it gently, feeling the weight of Tessa's hope. "I'm not a clockmaker," she said. "Just here to sell the place. But I can take a look." She set the clock on the workbench, its face simple, its hand stuck at 6:23. She opened the back, expecting rusted gears, but they gleamed as if polished yesterday. Her stomach twisted. Another clock, too perfect. Tessa watched, biting her lip. "Folks say this shop's special, that Elias could fix more than clocks. I thought maybe since you're his kin..." Clara forced a smile, hiding her unease. "I'll do what I can. Leave it with me, all right?" Tessa nodded, relief flickering in her eyes, and left with a quiet thank you. Clara stared at the clock, its stillness mocking the ticking around her. She didn't know where to start. Elias's tools were foreign to her, his skill a mystery. Yet the shop seemed to hum, as if urging her to try. She reached for a screwdriver, then stopped. The mantel clock's ticking shifted, louder, insistent. Clara turned and her breath caught. Tessa's clock was moving, its second hand sweeping smoothly. She hadn't touched it. Her hands trembled as she backed away, the shop's air growing thick. A shadow flickered in the corner of her vision, gone when she turned. The same figure from that first night, bending over the workbench. She blinked and it was nothing, just crates and dust. "Enough," she muttered, grabbing her hat. She needed air, needed to clear her head. She locked the shop and headed to the saloon across the street, its swinging doors a welcome escape. The place was dim, smelling of whiskey and sawdust. A few locals glanced her way, but she ignored them, sliding onto a bar stool. The bartender, a grizzled man named Hank, poured her a sarsaparilla without asking. "Look like you've seen a ghost, Miss Wade," he said, his grin gap-toothed. Clara sipped the drink, its sweetness grounding her. "Just this town getting to me. Everyone talks like they know something I don't." Hank chuckled. "Dusthollow's got its secrets. Your grandpa knew 'em better than most. Ever tell you about the clocks he fixed for folks? Not just gears, but lives somehow." He leaned closer, voice low. "Some say he had help. Something not quite human." Clara rolled her eyes, but her pulse quickened. "You're saying my grandpa had a ghost on payroll?" Hank shrugged. "I'm saying things happen here that don't make sense. Like that rancher, Jonah Reed, always poking around your shop. He's got his own story, tied to Elias. Ask him about it sometime. She frowned, remembering the pocket watch, Jonah's guarded look. Before she could press Hank, the saloon doors swung open. Jonah himself walked in, his boots steady, his eyes finding her like they always did. He tipped his hat and joined her at the bar, ordering a coffee. Twice in one day, Clara said, keeping her tone light. You following me, Reed? Jonah's smile was slow, warm. Just thirsty, and maybe wondering how you're holding up in that shop. Find anything else unexpected? She thought of Tessa's clock, the shadow, the letter in her pocket. Nothing I can't handle, she lied. What's your deal with this place, anyway? Everyone's got a theory about you and Elias. His smile faded, his fingers tightening around his mug. Elias helped me once when I was lost, not just with clocks. That's all you need to know for now. He stood, leaving a coin on the bar. Watch yourself, Clara. Some things in Dusthollow don't stay buried. He left, and Clara sat there, the saloon's noise fading. She pulled the letter from her pocket, its wax seal cracked. L.R., could it be Jonah's mother? His sister? She tucked it away, her mind spinning. Back at the shop, Tessa's clock would be waiting, ticking or not. And the mantel clock always ticking, always watching. She finished her drink and headed out, the desert wind carrying that faint tick-tock, like a whisper she couldn't ignore. The afternoon light slanted through the clock shop's grimy windows, painting the floorboards in gold. Clara stood at the workbench, staring at Tessa's brass clock. Its hands moved steadily now, as if it had never been broken. She hadn't touched it, hadn't even opened it beyond that first glance. The mantel clock ticked nearby, its rhythm sensing with Tessa's. A duet that felt too deliberate, too alive. Clara's fingers itched to smash them both, to silence the impossible, but she knew it wouldn't help. Dusthollow was weaving its spell, and she was caught in its threads. She turned to Elias's journal, hoping for answers. His words were scattered, poetic, frustratingly vague. Clocks hold more than time, he'd written. They carry promises, regrets, moments left unfinished. Clara snorted, closing the book. Promises didn't fix gears, and regrets didn't pay bills. Yet the letter in her pocket, Eller's letter, felt heavier with every tick. She pulled it out, breaking the seal. The paper smelled faintly of lavender, the ink faded but legible. Elias, it began, I know you think I'm foolish, but I can't let go. The clock you made for me stopped the day he left. I need it to run again, to feel him near. Please don't tell Jonah. He'd never understand. It was signed Lila Reed. Clara's breath caught. Jonah's mother? Sister? Whoever Lila was, her words were raw, pleading. Clara folded the letter, her mind racing. Elias had kept this secret, but why? The shop door creaked open, and Clara shoved the letter into her pocket. Tessa Hawley stood there, her face bright with hope. I couldn't wait, Tessa said, stepping inside. Any luck with Ma's clock? Clara hesitated, then gestured to the workbench. See for yourself. Tessa's eyes widened as she heard the ticking, her fingers trembling as she touched the clock's face. It's working, she whispered. How did you? I didn't, Clara admitted, her voice tight. It just started, like it wanted to. She braced for skepticism, but Tessa only smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. Ma always said this shop was magic, Tessa said. Thank you, Clara. You don't know what this means. She hugged the clock to her chest and left, the door's bell jingling softly. Clara watched her go, unease curling in her gut. Magic? No. Something else was at work here, something she couldn't name. She busied herself with the shop, sweeping dust and stacking crates, but the ticking followed her, relentless. The shadow came again, fleeting, a figure at the edge of her vision. This time it lingered near the grandfather clock, its carved moons glowing faintly in the dim light. Clara froze, her broom clattering to the floor. Who's there? She called, her voice sharper than she meant. No answer, just the ticking, louder now, like a heartbeat. She approached the grandfather clock, her boots heavy on the floorboards. Its pendulum was still, but the air around it felt charged, like a storm about to break. She reached out, then stopped. A soft click sounded, and the clock's door swung open. Inside, nestled among the gears, was a locket, its silver tarnished but intricate. Clara's hand shook as she picked it up. It clicked open, revealing a faded photograph of a woman with Jonah's storm cloud eyes. On the back, in tiny script, Lila, 1878. Clara's heart pounded. Layla Reed. The letter, the locket, this wasn't coincidence. She snapped the locket shut, her mind spinning. Was Layla the shadow? The one mending clocks? But why? And why now? She needed answers, and Jonah was the key. He knew more than he let on, always had. She locked the shop and headed to the ranch where Jonah worked, a mile outside town. The desert stretched endless around her, the wind carrying that faint tick-tock like a guide. The ranch was modest, its corral filled with horses, their breath steaming in the cooling air. Jonah was there, mending a fence, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hat shading his face. He looked up as she approached, his smile cautious. "Clara," he said, setting down his hammer. "Didn't expect you out here. Something wrong?" She held up the locket, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Found this in the shop. Layla Reed." Who was she, Jonah? And don't dodge me this time. His face hardened, his eyes flicking to the locket. He took it, his fingers lingering on the silver. "My mother," he said finally, his voice low. "She died when I was a boy. What's this got to do with you?" "Everything," Clara said, pulling out the letter. She wrote to Elias about a clock, about someone she lost. And now clocks are fixing themselves, Jonah. Tessa's the mantle one, all of them. You know what's happening, don't you? He looked away, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I know enough to leave it be," he said. "Elias warned me some things ain't meant to be dug up. You should listen, Clara." She stepped closer, frustration flaring. "I'm not you. I need to understand. Was Lila tied to the shop? To whatever's there?" Jonah's eyes met hers, raw and unguarded. "She loved that shop," he said softly. "And Elias. They had something once before my pay, but it's done. Let it stay done." He handed her the locket and turned back to the fence, ending the conversation. Clara stood there, the locket cold in her palm. The tick-tock followed her back to town, louder now, as if the desert itself was counting down. She didn't believe in ghosts, but Dusthollow was blurring that line. Leela's face, Her words, her love, they were pieces of a story Clara couldn't escape. And the shop, with its ticking heart, was waiting for her to return. The desert dusk wrapped Dusthollow in a soft purple haze, the kind that made the world feel half-dreamed. Clara trudged back to the clock shop, the locket and Lila's letter heavy in her pocket. Jonah's words stung, his refusal to explain, his warning to let things lie. But the shop wouldn't let her go, its ticking pulling her like a tide. She unlocked the door, the bells jingle swallowed by the chorus of clocks. The mantel clock ticked loudest, its hands at 6:14, steady as a heartbeat. Tessa's brass clock joined in, and now the grandfather clock hummed too, its pendulum swaying gently, though Clara hadn't touched it. She lit a lantern, its glow casting shadows that danced like memories. The shop felt alive, the air thick with something unspoken. She set the locket on the workbench next to Elias's journal and opened it again. Lila's photograph stared back, her eyes piercing, almost pleading. Clara's chest tightened. She didn't believe in spirits, but this Lila, the clocks, the shadow, was more than coincidence. She needed to know what tied Lila to this place, to Elias, to the ticking that wouldn't stop. She flipped through the journal, searching for clues. Elias's notes grew stranger the deeper she went. "The mender comes at dusk," he wrote, "not to haunt, but to finish what was left undone." Clocks are her language. Clara's pulse quickened her. "Layla?" She shook her head, trying to stay grounded. Elias was a dreamer, not a mystic. Yet the ticking grew louder, as if agreeing with his words. A soft creak broke her focus. The shop's back door, leading to a small storage room, was ajar. Clara hadn't touched it. She grabbed the lantern and stepped toward it, her boots loud against the floorboards. The storage room was cramped, filled with crates and broken clocks, their faces cracked like old promises. In the corner, a small table held a single clock, a delicate silver one, its face etched with roses. It was ticking, its hands moving smoothly. Clara's breath hitched. She'd never seen this clock before. She reached for it, then stopped. The air grew cold, and the lantern flickered. A shadow moved behind her, reflected in the clock's glass face. Not her shadow, someone else's, slight and feminine, bending over the table. Clara spun around, but the room was empty. Her heart pounded, her voice barely a whisper. "Lila?" No answer, just the ticking, now a symphony across the shop. Clara backed out of the storage room, clutching the silver clock. She set it on the workbench next to the locket. The clock's back was engraved, "To Lila, my heart's timekeeper. Elias." Clara's hands shook as she opened the clock's panel. Inside, a tiny note was tucked among the gears, in the same flowing script as the letter. "Fix it, Elias. Fix us." Clara's mind reeled. Lila and Elias had loved each other, but someone had torn them apart. Jonah's father? Time? Death? She sank onto a stool, the pieces falling together, but not enough. The shop was trying to tell her something through the clocks, through Lila. But what did it want her to do? The door's bell jingled, startling her. Mabel Thorne stood there, her silver braid catching the lantern's light. "Working late, Clara?" she asked, her tone too knowing. She carried a tin of cornbread, setting it on the counter. "Thought you might need a bite." Clara forced a smile, hiding her nerves. "Thanks, Mabel." just lost in this mess. She gestured to the workbench, the locket and silver clock gleaming under the light. Mabel's eyes lingered on them, her smile fading. "That's Lila Reed's clock," she said softly. "Elias made it for her years ago. She loved him, you know, more than she ever loved Jonah's pay." Clara's throat tightened. "Jonah told me a little. Said it's done, to let it be." Mabel snorted, crossing her arms. "Jonah's carrying his own ghosts. Lila was a bright soul, but she broke when her love with Elias ended. That clock," she nodded at the silver one, "was her way of holding on to him. When it stopped, so did she, in a way." Clara glanced at the clock. "It's ticking steady." "It's running now," she said quietly. "Like Tessa's. Like the mantle one. I didn't fix them, Mabel." Mabel's gaze softened, but there was a spark of something understanding, maybe fear. This shop's always been more than wood and gears. Elias knew it. Lila did too. Maybe you're starting to. She paused, then added, "Be gentle with it, Clara. Some things mend slow." She left and Clara sat alone, the ticking filling the silence. She opened the locket again, staring at Lila's face. The shadow hadn't appeared again, but its presence lingered, like a breath held too long. Clara didn't know how to fix clocks, let alone lives, but the shop seemed to think she could. She touched the silver clock, it sticking warm under her fingers like a pulse. Maybe Lila wasn't haunting her. Maybe she was asking for help. Clara stood, determined. She'd find Jonah tomorrow, press him for the truth about Lila and Elias. If the shop was speaking, she'd learn its language. The desert night pressed against the windows, and the ticking followed her as she locked up, a soft promise that tomorrow might hold answers. The morning sun crept over Dusthollow, painting the clock shop's windows in hues of amber and rose. Clara stood at the workbench, the silver clock Lila's clock, ticking softly beside the locket and Elias's journal. She hadn't slept well, her dreams tangled with images of spinning gears and Lila's face, her eyes pleading across time. The shop felt different now, less like a burden and more like a confession waiting to be heard. The mantle clock, Tessa's brass clock, and the grandfather clock joined Lila's in a quiet chorus, their rhythms blending into something almost soothing, like a lullaby from the desert itself. Clara traced the engraving on Lila's clock to Lila, my heart's timekeeper, E. The note inside, "Fix it, Elias. Fix us," haunted her. What had broken between them? Why was Lila's presence, or whatever it was, stirring now? Clara didn't believe in ghosts, not really, but she couldn't deny the clocks, the shadow, the way the shop seemed to breathe with purpose. She needed Jonah to stop dodging and tell her the truth. She opened Elias's journal again, skimming for anything about Lila. A passage caught her eye, written in his slanted script. "She comes when the light fades, mending what I cannot. I see her in the gears, in the quiet. She's waiting, but for what? Forgiveness? Or just to be seen?" Clara's skin prickled. Elias had known something was here, something tied to Lila. Maybe he'd welcomed it. The door's bell jingled, and Clara looked up, expecting Mabel or Tessa. Instead, a stranger stood there, an older man, his face weathered like the desert itself, his coat patched at the elbows. He carried a wooden clock, its frame carved with vines, its hands frozen at 9:12. "You the new clockmaker?" he asked, his voice rough but kind. Name's Amos Cutler. This here's been silent since my wife passed. Heard you fixed Tess's, thought maybe. Clara hesitated, her instinct to refuse. She wasn't a clockmaker, and the shop's fixes weren't her doing. But Amos's eyes held a quiet hope, like Tessa's had. I can try, she said, taking the clock. Its gears were dull, jammed with dust. She set it on the workbench, promising to let him know if it worked. Amos nodded, tipping his hat, and left, his steps slow as if reluctant to leave the clock behind. Alone, Clara stared at Amos's clock. She didn't touch it, half afraid it would start on its own like the others. The shop's ticking grew louder, Lila's silver clock leading the rhythm. Clara's gaze drifted to the storage room, its door still ajar from last night. Something pulled her toward it, a feeling she couldn't name. She grabbed the lantern and stepped inside, the air cool and musty. The crates and broken clocks were as she'd left them, but the small table where she'd found Lila's clock held something new, a brass key, its head shaped like a crescent moon. Clara picked it up, her fingers tingling. It wasn't here yesterday. She turned it over, finding no markings, but it felt familiar, like it belonged to the shop. She pocketed and scanned the room, her lantern's light catching a glint in the corner. A small chest, half hidden under a tarp, its lock shaped like a moon. Her breath caught. She knelt, fitting the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click, and the chest opened, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The letters were from Lila to Elias, each one a piece of their story. Clara read the top one, her hands trembling. Elias, I know we can't be together, not with him watching. But this clock you made, it's my heart, keeping time for you. Don't let it stop. The him wasn't named, but Clara guessed it was Jonah's father, a man who'd stood between them. The letter spoke of stolen moments, of a love that burned bright but ended in silence. Lila's last letter was different, desperate. The clock stopped, Elias. I can't feel you anymore. I'm fading. Clara's eyes stung. Lila hadn't just lost Elias. She'd lost herself. Was that why she lingered, mending clocks, trying to fix what time had broken? Clara closed the chest, clutching the letters. She needed to talk to Jonah now. He was the last piece of Lila's puzzle. She locked the shop and headed to the saloon, where Hank might know Jonah's whereabouts. The saloon was quiet, a few ranchers nursing coffee. Hank leaned on the bar, polishing a glass. Back so soon, Miss Wade? He said, grinning. What's chassing you today? Jonah, Clara said, cutting to the chase. Where is he? Hank raised an eyebrow. Out at his ranch, likely. Saw him heading that way for dawn. You two got business? Something like that, Clara said, avoiding his curious gaze. She thanked him and left, the desert wind tugging at her hat. At Jonah's ranch, she found him by the corral, brushing a horse, his movements steady but his face distant. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. Clara, he said, setting the brush down. You're persistent. I'll give you that. She held up the letters, her voice firm. Lila's words, Jonah. To Elias. They loved each other, didn't they? Why didn't you tell me? Jonah's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the letters. Because it don't change nothing. Ma's gone. Elias is gone. Dragging it up just hurts. It's not gone, Clara said, stepping closer. Something's in that shop, Jonah. Fixing clocks, leaving signs. I think it's Leela trying to finish what she started. You owe me the truth. He looked at her, his eyes raw. Truth is, my pa broke her. He didn't love her, not like Elias did. When she died, I blamed Elias for not saving her. But maybe she's still trying to save him. He turned away, his voice breaking. Go back to your shop, Clara. I can't help you. Clara stood there, the letters heavy in her hand. The tick-tock followed her back to town, soft but insistent, like Lila's voice calling her home. The desert night settled over Dusthollow, stars prickling the sky like scattered gears. Clara sat at the clock shop's workbench, the lantern casting a warm glow over Lila's letters, the silver clock, and the locket. The mantel clock ticked steadily, joined by Tessa's brass clock, the grandfather clock, and now Amos's vine-carved clock, which had started ticking an hour ago without her touch. The shop hummed with their rhythm, a pulse that felt less like a mystery and more like a conversation. Clara didn't understand the language yet, but she was starting to listen. Lila's letters lay open, their words painting a love that had burned bright but crumbled under the weight of Dusthollow's expectations. Jonah's father, a man named Caleb Reed, had been a hard soul, possessive and proud. Lila's love for Elias had been a secret, one that cost her more than Clara could fathom. The last letter, with its plea, "I'm fading," felt like a cry across time. Clara touched the silver clock, its ticking warm, almost alive. Was Lila mending these clocks to heal her own broken heart? Or was it for Elias, for Jonah, for something Clara hadn't yet grasped? She opened Elias's journal, hoping for clarity. A new passage caught her eye, tucked between sketches of pendulums. The mender doesn't ask for fear or worship. She seeks only to set things right, one tick at a time. I've seen her shadow, felt her sorrow. She's bound to this shop, to me, until the work is done. Clara's breath caught. Elias hadn't just known about Lila's presence. He'd accepted it, maybe even helped it. But what was the work? Forgiveness? Love? Or something simpler, like memory? A soft thud pulled her from the journal. A small music box had fallen from a shelf, its lid open, a faint melody tinkling slow, haunting, like a half-remembered dream. Clara hadn't seen it before, but nothing in this shop surprised her anymore. She picked it up, its wood smooth, its tiny dancer frozen mid-twirl. A name was carved on the bottom, Lila. Clara's pulse quickened. Another piece, another sign. She wound the key, and the melody grew clearer, a waltz that felt like moonlight on sand. The lantern flickered, and the shadow appeared not in the storage room, but here near the workbench. A woman's silhouette, delicate, her head bowed as if working on a clock. Clara froze, her voice barely a whisper. "Leela, is that you?" The shadow didn't move, but the music box's melody swelled, filling the shop. Clara's fear ebbed, replaced by a strange calm. If this was Lila, she wasn't here to harm. She was here to mend. The shadow faded, and the music box slowed, its dancer still. Clara set it down, her hands steady now. She didn't need to run or hide. The shop was speaking, and she was ready to answer. But she couldn't do it alone. Jonah held the key to Lila's story, whether he wanted to or not. She resolved to find him at dawn, to make him face what he'd buried. The door's bell jingled, startling her. Mabel Thorne stood there, wrapped in a shawl, her silver braid glinting in the lantern's light. "Burning the midnight oil, Clara?" she said, her smile soft but searching. She carried a thermos, pouring steaming tea into a mug. "Thought you might need warming up." Clara accepted the mug, its heat grounding her. "Thanks, Mabel. I'm finding things. About Lila, about Elias. This shop's not what I thought." Mabel nodded, her eyes on the music box. That was Lila's favorite tune. She'd hum it while Elias worked. They were something special, those two. Her voice dropped conspiratorial. "You seeing her, ain't you? The one fixing the clocks?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. "A shadow. Not clear, but yeah. You think it's Lila?" Mabel sipped her tea, her gaze distant. "I think Lila never left. Not really. She loved Elias too much, and this shop was their haven. When Caleb took her away, it broke her. Maybe she's trying to put it back together." Clara frowned, clutching the mug. "Jonah won't talk about it. Keeps telling me to let it go." Mabel sighed. "Jonah's hurting. Caleb was hard on him, harder on Lila. Jonah blames Elias for not fighting for her, but it ain't that simple. Love don't always win, Clara. Sometimes it just waits." Clara glanced at the silver clock, its ticking steady. "What does she want, Mabel? To fix clocks? Or something more?" Mabel's smile was sad. "Maybe she wants to be remembered. Or maybe she wants Jonah to forgive. You'll know when the time's right." She stood, leaving the thermos. "Get some rest, girl. The shop will keep." Alone again, Clara finished the tea, the music box silent now. She locked the shop and walked to the boarding house, the desert air cool against her skin. The tick-tock followed her, soft but persistent, like Lila's melody lingering in the night. She didn't sleep much, her thoughts spinning with Lila's love, Jonah's pain, and the shop's quiet plea. At dawn, she'd find Jonah, no matter what. When morning came, Clara headed to the ranch, the sun barely cresting the horizon. Jonah was by the barn, splitting wood, his swings precise but heavy, like he was fighting more than the logs. He'd paused as she approached, his eyes wary. "Clara," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "you don't give up, do you?" She held up the music box, its wood glinting in the light. "Lila's," she said. "Found it last night. She's in the shop, Jonah. Mending clocks, leaving signs. I need to know why." Jonah's face tightened, but he didn't look away. "I told you it's done. Ma's gone. Let her rest." "She's not resting," Clara said, her voice firm. "She's waiting. For you, maybe. Tell me what happened, Jonah. All of it." He set the axe down, his shoulders sagging. "All right," he said finally, "but not here. Come to the shop tonight. I'll tell you what I know." He turned back to the wood, ending the conversation. Clara nodded, the music box heavy in her hands. The tick-tock followed her back to town, a promise that tonight might bring answers or more questions. The moon hung low over Dusthollow, its light spilling through the clock shop's windows like liquid silver. Clara waited inside, the lantern dim, casting soft shadows across the workbench. Lila's silver clock ticked beside the mantel clock, Tessa's brass clock, and Amos's vine-carved one, their rhythms weaving a quiet hymn. The music box sat open, its dancer still, but Clara could almost hear its waltz, lingering like a memory. She clutched Lila's letters, their edges worn from her restless fingers. Jonah had promised answers tonight, and she felt the weight of that promise, heavy as the desert night. The shop felt different now, not just alive but expectant, as if it knew something was coming. Clara's eyes kept drifting to the storage room door, still ajar, where she'd found the crescent moon key and Lila's letters. The shadow hadn't appeared since last night, but its presence lingered, a whisper in the ticking. She didn't fear it anymore, not exactly. It was Lila, she was sure, now mending clocks, leaving signs, trying to reach across time. But for what? Forgiveness? Love? Or just to be seen? The door's bell jingled, and Jonah stepped inside, his hat in hand, his face etched with something raw grief, maybe, or resolve. He looked at the workbench, at Lila's clock, and the music box, and his shoulders tensed. "You weren't kiddin'," he said, his voice low. "She's everywhere in here." Clara stood, her hands steady, despite the knot in her chest. "She's trying to tell us something, Jonah. I found her letters, her locket, her clock. She loved Elias, but your father got in the way. What happened? Why is she still here?" Jonah sank onto a stool, his eyes fixed on the silver clock. "Ma was light itself," he said, his voice rough. "She laughed easy, loved deep. Pa Caleb wasn't like that. He wanted her to be his, only his. When she met Elias, it was like she found air after drowning. But Pa wouldn't let her go. He threatened Elias, said he'd ruin him if they didn't stop." Clara listened, her heart aching. "So they ended it?" Jonah nodded, his fingers tracing the music box's edge. "Ma tried to stay with Pa for me, but it broke her. She'd visit Elias here, in secret, just to talk, to feel alive. He made her that clock," he gestured to the silver one, "to remind her she was more than Pa's wife. When it stopped, she took it as a sign. Said her heart stopped, too." Clara's throat tightened. The letter said she was fading. "Did she?" "Died a year later," Jonah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Fever, the doc said, but I think it was grief. Pa didn't care much after that. Left me to fend for myself. I blamed Elias for not fighting harder, for letting her slip away." He looked at Clara, his eyes stormy. "I was wrong. He loved her too in his way. This shop was his way of keeping her close." Clara touched the locket, Lila's face staring back. "She's still here, Jonah. Fixing clocks, Tessa's, Amos's, even this one. I've seen her shadow, felt her. What does she want?" Jonah shook his head, his voice breaking. "I don't know. Forgiveness, maybe? For leaving me? For not salving herself?" He stood, pacing, his boots loud in the quiet shop. "I can't face her, Clara. Not after all this time." The lantern flickered and the ticking grew louder, urgent. Clara's gaze darted to the storage room. The shadow was there, faint but clear, standing by the small table. Not moving, just watching. Clara's breath caught, but she didn't look away. "Jonah," she whispered, "look." He turned, his face paling. The shadow didn't fade this time, its form soft but distinct, a woman, her head bowed, her hands working at something invisible. The silver clock's ticking surged, its hands spinning faster, then slowing to a steady beat. Jonah stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Ma?" The shadow lifted its head, as if hearing him. The air grew warm, heavy with lavender. Then it was gone, the ticking softening. Jonah sank back onto the stool, his hands shaking. "She's really here," he said, almost to himself. "All this time." Clara knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "She's not haunting you, Jonah. She's trying to reach you. Maybe she needs you to let her go." He looked at her, his eyes wet. "How do I do that? I'm still angry at her, at Elias, at myself." Clara touched his arm, the first time she'd reached for him. "Start by talking to her. Not the shadow, but her. Here." She gestured to the clocks, the shop, the air thick with Lila's presence. "She's listening." Jonah nodded, slow, uncertain. "I'll try, but not tonight. I need time." He stood, his hat back on, his resolve fragile, but there. "You're braver than me, Clara. Stay in here facing this." She smiled faintly. "Not brave, just stubborn. This shop's got me now, like it got Elias." Jonah left, the bells jingle fading into the night. Clara stayed, the clocks ticking around her. She opened the music box, winding it gently. The waltz played, soft and clear, and for a moment she felt Lila, her sorrow, her love, her hope. Clara didn't know how to fix clocks or hearts, but she'd try for Lila, for Jonah, for the shop that held them all. She locked up, the desert quiet except for that faint tick-tock, following her to the boarding house. Tomorrow she'd check on Amos's clock, maybe find more of Lila's signs. The shop was a story, and Clara was part of it now, whether she wanted to be or not. The dawn light crept into Dusthollow, soft as a sigh, painting the clock shop's windows in pale gold. Clara sat at the workbench, her eyes heavy from a night of restless dreams, Lila's waltz, Jonah's trembling voice, the shadow's quiet gaze. The shop hummed with its familiar chorus, the mantel clock, Tessa's brass clock, Amos's vine-carved clock, and Lila's silver one, their ticks blending like voices in a choir. The music box sat closed, but its melody lingered in Clara's mind, a thread tying her to Lila's unfinished story. She hadn't touched Amos's clock since he'd brought it, yet it ticked steadily, its hands now at 7:22, as if it had never been broken. Clara didn't question it anymore. The shop had its own rules, and Lila was its keeper. Last night's moment with Jonah had shifted something, his admission, his glimpse of the shadow. He'd promised to try to face Lila's memory, but Clara felt the weight of it too. The shop wasn't just Lila's. It was Elias's, Jonah's, maybe even hers now. She wasn't sure what that meant, but she couldn't walk away. She opened Elias's journal, its pages worn from her constant reading. A new entry caught her eye, tucked near the back. She mends for those who carry loss. Each clock is a heart, each tick a chance to heal. I tried to help her, but some wounds are too deep for one man. Clara's chest tightened. Elias had known Lila was more than a ghost, more than a shadow. She was mending clocks for others, Tessa, Amos, because she couldn't mend herself. But what about Jonah? What about Clara? A soft clink broke her thoughts. A small pocket watch had rolled from a shelf, its chain tangled like a snake. Clara picked it up, its face simple, its hands stuck at 4:09. The back was engraved Caleb Reed, 1875. Jonah's father. Her stomach twisted. Another sign, another piece of the puzzle. She set it beside Lila's clock, its ticking loud in the quiet shop. Was Lila pointing her to Caleb, to the man who'd broken her? The door's bell jingled, and Tessa Howe stepped in, her face bright but hesitant. "Clara," she said, clutching a small cloth bag, "I wanted to thank you for Ma's clock. It's like she's with me again." She set the bag on the counter, blushing. "Brought you some cookies. Nothing fancy, but it's something." Clara smiled, warmed by the gesture. "You didn't have to, Tessa. I'm glad the clock's running." She didn't mention that she hadn't fixed it, that Lila's shadow had done the work. Tessa's eyes drifted to the workbench, to Caleb's pocket watch. "That's an old one," she said softly. "Belonged to Jonah's pa, didn't it?" Clara nodded, wary. "Found it just now." "You knew him?" Tessa's smile faded. "Not well. He was hard. Folks said he drove Lila to her grave, keeping her from Elias. Jonah carries that weight, you know." She paused, then added, "You're doing good here, Clara. This shop's alive again, because of you." Clara shook her head. "It's not me. It's something else." She stopped short of saying Lila's name, but Tessa's knowing look said she understood. After Tessa left, Clara turned to the pocket watch. She opened its back, expecting rusted gears, but they were pristine like all the others. A tiny note was tucked inside in Lila's script. "Caleb, you stopped my time." "I'm sorry." Clara's breath caught. An apology to the man who'd hurt her? Why? She set the watch down, her mind spinning. Layla wasn't just mending clocks. She was mending regrets, hers and others. But Caleb's watch wasn't ticking. Not yet. The shop's air grew heavy, and the lantern flickered. The shadow appeared near the grandfather clock, its form clearer now, a woman in a long dress, her hands moving as if winding a spring. Clara didn't flinch this time. "Lila," she said softly, "what do you need from me?" The shadow paused, its head tilting as if listening. The pocket watch clicked, its hands jerking to life, ticking in sync with the others. Clara's heart raced. Lila was answering in her own way. The shadow faded, but the air felt lighter, like a held breath released. Clara knew what she had to do: show Jonah the watch, the note, make him face his father's role in Lila's pain. She locked the shop and headed to the ranch, the pocket watch in her pocket, its ticking a steady guide. Jonah was by the corral, feeding horses, his face drawn but calm. He looked up, his eyes narrowing. "Clara, back already?" She held out the watch, her voice firm. "Caleb's. Lila left it for me to find. There's a note inside, Jonah. She's sorry to him, after everything." "Why?" Jonah took the watch, his fingers trembling as he read the note. His face crumpled, a mix of anger and grief. "She always blamed herself," he said, his voice raw, "for not leaving Pa, for not saving me from him. I thought she was weak, but she was trying to protect me." Clara stepped closer, her voice gentle. "She's still trying, Jonah. Fixing clocks, leaving signs. I think she wants you to forgive her and yourself." He clutched the watch, his eyes wet. "I don't know how," he whispered, "but I'll try. For her." Clara nodded, her own eyes stinging. "Come to the shop tomorrow. We'll figure it out together." He agreed, and Clara walked back to town, the tick-tock softer now, like a lullaby. The shop was waiting, and so was Lila, her story unfolding one tick at a time. The midday sun beat down on Dusthollow, turning the clock shop into a haven of cool shadows. Clara stood at the workbench, surrounded by the steady ticking of the mantel clock, Tessa's brass clock, Amos's vine-carved clock, and Lila's silver one. Caleb's pocket watch lay open beside them. Its note, "Caleb, you stopped my time." "I'm sorry," a quiet confession in Lila's delicate script. The music box sat nearby, its lid closed, but Clara could almost hear its waltz, weaving through the shop's chorus like a memory. The air felt charged, as if the shop itself was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. Clara hadn't seen Jonah since yesterday at the ranch, when he'd clutched his father's watch, his face torn between grief and resolve. She'd asked him to come today, to face Lila's signs together, but she wasn't sure he'd show. The shop was a mirror, reflecting wounds no one wanted to see. Yet Lila kept mending clocks, hearts, regrets one tick at a time. Clara felt it too, a pull to stay, to finish what her grandfather had started. The shop wasn't just Elias's anymore. It was hers and Lila's, and maybe Jonah's if he could find the courage. She opened Elias's journal, its pages soft from wear. A passage near the end caught her eye. The mender's work is never done, not until the last heart ticks true. I tried to set her free, but she waits for her son, for the one who carries her pain. Clara's throat tightened. Lila was bound to Jonah, to his forgiveness. Caleb's watch was proof her apology, her plea. But would Jonah accept it? Could he? A soft clatter broke her thoughts. A small brass pendulum had fallen from a shelf, rolling to a stop at her feet. Clara picked it up, its weight cool in her palm. It belonged to no clock she recognized, yet it felt right, like it had always been here. She set it beside the pocket watch, and the shop's ticking shifted, growing louder, more urgent. The shadow appeared, not in the storage room, but near the workbench, its form clearer than ever a woman, her dress flowing, her hands adjusting an invisible clock. Clara's heart skipped, but she didn't look away. "Lila," she whispered, "he's coming. I hope." The shadow paused, its head tilting as if hearing her. The brass pendulum glowed faintly, then dimmed, and the shadow faded. The ticking softened, but the air hummed with promise. Clara clutched the pendulum, its purpose unclear but vital. Lila was guiding her, trusting her to help Jonah heal. She tucked it into her pocket, her resolve hardening. She'd wait for him, no matter how long it took. The door's bell jingled, and Amos Cutler stepped in, his weathered face brightening. "Miss Wade," he said, tipping his hat. "Heard my clock's ticking again. That true?" Clara nodded, gesturing to the vine-carved clock. "Started yesterday. I didn't do much, Amos. It just came alive." Amos approached the clock, his fingers tracing its frame, his eyes misty. "My Ellie loved this one. Said it kept our time, our love. When it stopped, I thought I'd lost her for good." He looked at Clara, his voice thick. "You've got Elias's gift, girl. This shop's blessed." Clara smiled, uneasy. "It's not me, Amos. It's something else." She didn't say Lila's name, but Amos's knowing nod said he understood. He thanked her, taking the clock with care, and left the bell's jingle fading into the desert's hum. Alone again, Clara turned to Caleb's watch. Its ticking was steady now, but faint, like it was waiting for something or someone. She opened the locket, Lila's face staring back. her eyes soft but sad. Clara felt a pang, not just for Lila, but for herself. She'd come to Dusthollow to sell the shop, to escape her own past debts, loneliness, a life that felt stuck. But the shop had other plans, pulling her into its story, making her care. The bell jingled again, and Jonah stood there, his hat low, his eyes shadowed but steady. "Clara," he said, stepping inside. "I'm here. Don't know if I'm ready, but I'm here." She stood, relief flooding her. "That's enough for now." She gestured to the workbench, to Caleb's watch, and the brass pendulum. "Leila left these. The watch started after I found her note. I think she's waiting for you to speak to her." Jonah approached, his boots heavy, his gaze fixed on the watch. He picked it up, the note trembling in his fingers. "She's sorry," he said, his voice rough. "After all paid did, she's sorry. I don't understand." Clara touched the pendulum in her pocket, her voice gentle. "Maybe she's sorry for staying with him, for the pain it caused you. She's trying to make it right, Jonah. Through the clocks, through us." He looked at her, his eyes raw. "What do I say? She's gone. This," he held up the watch, "it's just a thing." "It's her," Clara said. "This shop, these clocks, they're her heart. Talk to her, Jonah. She's listening." He sank onto a stool, clutching the watch. The shop's ticking grew louder, a pulse filling the air. Jonah's voice came, halting, soft. "Ma, I'm angry. You left me with him. But I know you tried. I see it now. He paused, his breath shaky. "I forgive you. I hope you can rest." The lantern flickered and the shadow appeared, standing by the mantel clock, its form glowing faintly. Jonah gasped, his eyes wide. The brass pendulum in Clara's pocket warmed and she pulled it out, its glow matching the shadows. The ticking surged, then soft, like a sigh. The shadow reached out as if touching Jonah, then faded, leaving a scent of lavender. Jonah wept, the watch pressed to his chest. Clara stood beside him, her own eyes wet, the shop's ticking now a lullaby gentle and final. The evening sky over Dusthollow glowed with streaks of orange and violet, as if the desert itself was exhaling its last light. Clara sat at the clock shop's workbench, the air soft with the familiar ticking of the mantel clock, Tessa's brass clock, Amos's vine-carved clock, and Lila's silver one. Caleb's pocket watch lay open, its hand steady, its faint tick now part of the shop's chorus. The brass pendulum from yesterday rested beside it, no longer glowing but warm, like a stone left in the sun. The music box sat closed, its waltz silent, but Clara felt its melody in the shop's rhythm. A quiet echo of Lila's last night's moment with Jonah had changed something. His words to Lila, his forgiveness, had softened the shop's air like a knot loosening. The shadow Lila hadn't appeared since, but Clara felt her still, not as a ghost but as a warmth, a pulse in the ticking. Jonah had left with the pocket watch, promising to return today to help Clara finish whatever Lila needed. Clara wasn't sure what that meant, but she knew it wasn't just about clocks. It was about hearts, Lila's, Jonah's, maybe her own. She opened Elias's journal, its pages now as familiar as her own hands. A passage near the end stood out, written in her grandfather's careful script. The mender's work is a bridge, not a chain. She binds the living to the lost, but only if they choose to cross. I couldn't save her, but I can hold the door." Clara's chest tightened. Elias had known Layla's purpose to mend, to connect, to heal. He'd stayed in this shop, keeping her memory alive, hoping Jonah would one day understand. Now Clara was here, holding that door for him. A soft creak came from the storage room. Clara glanced at the door, still ajar, its shadows beckoning. She grabbed the lantern and stepped inside, the air cool and thick with dust. The small table where she'd found Lila's clock and the crescent moon key held something new, a tiny brass bell, its surface etched with stars. Clara picked it up, its chime soft but clear, like a note in Lila's waltz. It felt like a gift, a final sign. She slipped it into her pocket, next to the pendulum, and scanned the room. Nothing else had changed, yet the air felt lighter, as if Lila had left this bell and stepped back. Back at the workbench, Clara set the bell beside the music box. The ticking grew louder, not urgent, but warm, like a welcome. She didn't see the shadow, but she felt it, a presence, not haunting, but guiding. "Layla," she whispered. "What now?" "Jonah's trying." "I'm trying." "What's left?" The bell chimed once, unprompted, its note ringing through the shop. The clock's ticking sensed a single heartbeat, then soft. Clara's eyes stung. Layla was answering, not with words, but with feeling gratitude, maybe, or peace. The shop wasn't just a place anymore. It was a promise, kept across time. The door's bell jingled, and Mabel Thorne stepped in, her silver braid catching the lantern's glow. She carried a basket of apples, their set, sharp, and sweet. "Thought you might be hungry," she said, her smile warm but searching. Her eyes landed on the brass bell, and she nodded, as if it confirmed something. "Leela's work, ain't it?" Clara nodded, her voice soft. "I think so. She's finishing something. For Jonah, for Elias, maybe for me." Mabel set the basket down, her gaze steady. "You're doing what Elias couldn't, Clara. Giving her a way to rest. Jonah, too. He's been carrying her pain a long time." Clara glanced at the workbench, at Lila's clock, and the bell. "He's coming today. I hope he's ready." Mabel's smile softened. "He will be. You've opened the door, girl. Now let him walk through." She left, her words lingering like the ticking. Jonah arrived an hour later, his hat low, Caleb's pocket watch in his hand. His face was tired but clear, like a sky after a storm. "Clara," he said, stepping inside, "I thought about what you said. About Ma, about forgiving. I want to finish this." Clara gestured to the workbench, where the bell and music box sat. "She left this today," she said, holding up the bell. Its chime rang softly, and Jonah's eyes widened. "I think she's ready too, Jonah. Say what you need to." He took a deep breath, clutching the watch. "Ma," he said, his voice steady but thick. "I was angry for so long. Thought you left me alone. But I see you now, your love, your fight. I'm sorry. I didn't before. I love you. Rest now." The shop's ticking surged, a wave of sound, then fell to a gentle hum. The lantern glowed brighter, and the air filled with lavender. No shadow appeared, but Clara felt Lila her warmth, her release. The bell chimed again, soft and final, and Jonah's shoulders relaxed, his eyes wet but calm. "She heard me," he said, almost to himself. "She's free." Clara touched his arm, her voice gentle. You both are. He nodded, pocketing the watch. Thank you, Clara, for seeing what I couldn't. They stood in silence, the shops ticking now a lullaby, not a call. Clara knew Lila's work was done, but hers wasn't. The shop was hers now, not to sell, but to keep, to mend in her own way. The desert dawn broke over Dusthollow, its light soft and golden, like a promise kept. Clara stood in the clock shop, the workbench bathed in the glow of a new day. The mantel clock ticked gently, joined by Tessa's brass clock, Amos's vine-carved clock, and Lila's silver one, their rhythms now a quiet hum, no longer urgent. Caleb's pocket watch rested beside the brass bell, its starry etchings catching the light. The music box sat open, its dancer still, but Clara felt its waltz in the air, a final note of Lila's story. The shop was at peace, its heart steady, its secrets laid bare. Yesterday's moment with Jonah had sealed something. His forgiveness, his words to Lila, had let her go, not just for him, but for the shop, for Elias, for Clara. The brass bell's chime, unprompted and clear, had been Lila's farewell, her work complete. Clara felt it in the shop's air, lighter now, like a long-held breath released. Yet she wasn't ready to leave. The shop had claimed her, not as a ghost, but as a keeper, a mender in her own way. She hadn't fixed a single clock, but she'd helped mend hearts, and that was enough. She opened Elias's journal one last time, its pages soft and familiar. The final entry was simple, written in his steady hand. The mender leaves when the work is done, but the shop remains. It chooses its next heart as it chose me. Clara smiled, her eyes stinging. Elias had known she'd come, that she'd stay. The shop wasn't just wood and gears. It was a bridge, connecting the living to the lost, and now it was hers. A soft tick drew her attention. The grandfather clock, its carved moons glowing faintly, chimed once a low, resonant note that filled the shop. Clara approached it, her boots soft on the floorboards. Its door was ajar, and inside, nestled among the gears, was a small brass ring, etched with a single word, time. No initials, no names, just a quiet truth. Clara slipped it onto her finger, its weight comforting. Lila's final gift, or Elias's, or the shop's, she didn't know, but it felt right. The door's bell jingled, and Jonah stepped in, his hat in hand, his face calm but touched by something new hope, maybe. Clara, he said, his voice steady, thought I'd find you here. Shop feels different. She nodded, leaning against the workbench. It's done, Jonah. Leela's gone, but not really. She's in the ticking and us. He glanced at the clocks, his eyes lingering on Lila's silver one. I feel her too. Not heavy anymore, just there. He pulled Caleb's pocket watch from his pocket, setting it beside the bell. Don't need to carry this now. It's hers, but it's yours too if you're staying. Clara's heart skipped. You think I should? Jonah's smile was slow, warm. This shop's got you, same as it got Elias. Dusthollow needs you, Clara. I reckon I do too. His words hung soft, not a confession but a truth, and Clara felt a warmth she hadn't expected. I'm staying, she said, her voice firm. Not for the shop, not for Lila, but for me. This is where I'm supposed to be. Jonah nodded, his eyes bright. Good. Town will be glad. I'll be around if you need me. He tipped his hat and left, the bell's jingle fading into the morning's quiet. Clara stood alone, the shops ticking, wrapping around her like a lullaby. She touched the brass ring, the bell, the music box, each a piece of Lila's story, now hers to keep. The shop was no longer a burden to sell, but a home, a place to mend what was broken clocks, lives, her own heart. She didn't know how to fix gears, but she'd learn, one tick at a time. She stepped outside, locking the door, the desert air warm and still. The tick-tock followed her, faint but steady, not a call, but a companion. Dusthollow stretched before her, its secrets settled, its stories waiting. Clara smiled, ready to meet them. Not all spirits seek to frighten. Some just wish to be remembered. If their tale lingered with you, let it rest with your breath. Sleep well tonight. And if you hear a whisper in your dreams, maybe it's just the end of the story.